Right.
What's up, gang? Hey, BB, what are you doing here? You lost.
I got nothing to do.
Man, I love it, dude. I love it. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming in. I really appreciate it. That's awesome. Hold on one second. Just trying to get everybody rocking and rolling. Give everybody kind of a few seconds, and then we'll jumpstart on today's topics and get everything rocking and rolling. I'm fired up. I'm trying to get everybody in here. Let's see. How you doing today, BB? Look at you, dude. You got a house.
Oh yeah.
You got a living space.
Yeah. You got to come see it.
Oh, well, Julie already shot me down.
Yeah, she's trying to be real shelter in placey.
I know. I was really kind of like, oh my God. She gave me the solid maybe. I was like, oh, that means no.
That probably means no.
Yeah, I got it. All right, so let's get started. So today, this is actually going to be really great because this is going to be one of my favorite episodes to talk about. The topics that we have today are freaking awesome. First of all, I think they really give people a lot of bang for their buck when it comes to cutting out the bells and whistles of a program, and then what really counts. And I want to help people out when it comes to that, because I feel like there's so much information out there of like, what's the best ab thing, what's this and that, and all the other stuff, when really you kind of hone in on what makes a program great, and then you just evolve from there. And then we'll jump into kind of the phases of development, and then we'll go into, Corey, you're the man, dude. That's all I got to say. You're the man. That's it. You already knew it. Okay, I got the crew today. I love it. So I'll jump.
Keep reminding me of that.
Say again, Corey.
Just keep reminding me that I'm.
that you're the man.
I need that moral support.
I love it. I love it. So first things first, I want to thank all you guys for jumping on today. Obviously, we got new faces. We got older faces that come in here, and I really appreciate you guys keeping this community together and really getting us together to just talk about fitness or life and other healthy habits that we can create. I love it, and I can't wait to get started with today. So with that being said, the first thing I want to get started on is topic number one. I want to get started on this because, like I was just describing a little bit ago, this really helped me when I was kind of going through some, I guess, growing pains and putting my program together as I started to evolve my own training, not just from training individuals, but training myself. Because the one thing I think we can all agree on, you got Instagram, you got influencers, you got, no offense, but you got wannabe people, and you got all these things going on, and they're giving you so much information overload. So much information overload that you don't even know where to start. And all you're doing is you're going from movement to movement to movement to movement, and you don't really know if you're doing it right. You got some burn behind it, some feeling, but I really think that the movements that I'm going to kind of lay out today, and you guys, I know, Mark, I know you got some movements up your sleeve, and I know, Corey, I've taught you a couple of things, and maybe you can, also kind of be like, you know what, I do some other stuff that I find to be really a strong component in I'll call it my athleticism, because I always train everybody as an athlete. And Baron, I just started training Baron a little while ago, and I've got him, into the more knowledgeable side of things. Nothing he's not familiar with, but Baron, maybe you can add your 2 cents on this too. That's what it's all about. I'm gonna add a couple movements in here that really break the mold to me when movement patterns, I should say, that really have helped me out and really kind of just focus on overall athleticism, because I try to stay as athletic as possible. So you got the squat. All right. Obviously, a lot of us know what the squat is. The next thing is a hinge movement. I think a hinge movement is super, super important. The next thing after that is a vertical pull. Anything that has to do with like pull-ups or lat pull downs or anything of that nature. One of my favorite things is presses or pushes. Okay, whether it's overhead or out in front. And one of the main things that I like to focus on too, if anything, is like.
Didn't have to. I've already had coffee today. Oh, sorry. Am I
No,
on mute? I'm
Mark,
on mute.
I thought you were gonna jump in. I was like, yes, Mark, jump in. I love it. And
Sorry about that.
no. And one of my absolute favorite things to do is going to be unilateral work. All right, one leg or one arm at a time. I think that's very important for stability overall. Now, Baron, I know that we've been training a lot, and I kind of gave you a rundown of stuff. And I know Baron just moved into a brand new house, because we can all congratulate him. Good job, Baron. All right, I love it. What is some takeaways that you got when we started training, when it came to like the pushes and the pull-ups, when your technique really started to evolve? Do you think those, once you got the kind of like grasp of those certain things, did you see a certain element of those come out a little bit more in your training and in your strength overall? Did you feel like?
Yeah, fixing the technique and having you give the right cues made it seem like I'm working out to the full like potential. Nothing was wasted. Where before I was kind of like maybe sagging down in push-ups and using other muscles and not focusing the energy where they should.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a waste. So afterwards, I would definitely feel like I worked out more than I did normally.
Yeah, and the funny thing about it is those things I just described, right? Like, is nothing you never heard of. It's has nothing to do with that. I'm not trying to break the mold or anything like that. I'm just trying to take all this other stuff and kind of trim off the fat and break it down into a couple different athletic categories where you're like, whoa, I don't really need 15 different things over here. I can really boil it down to 5. And let me just be obsessively masterful at these 5 things. And I think that was a big compliment to yourself to really take the time and the patience to break down that athleticism and those movement patterns, because I saw a change in you right away. Like once you started realizing, it's like, okay, well, boom, I don't have to focus on this. My obsession is going to lie in this. Like I saw and Baron, by the way, trains with me, and he only trains half-hour pops. So even more so, he has to dial his performance in. I mean, would you say that you saw your change come pretty quickly once you started kind of dialing in those movement patterns?
Such a big difference, easily noticeable within the second workout. Was better than the first, and each one after that got better and better.
Yeah. And what do you think about those things I just said, Baron? I mean, obviously they're incorporated in your program. Pull-ups, one of the main things, which is really still hard to this day for even me. Do you think those movement patterns I just said, like a squat, hinging from the hips, something I haven't got into yet, but I can show you how it's incorporated, and Mark too is extremely knowledgeable, and then like push-ups, doing it the proper way. Do you feel like those movements alone carry so much power and athleticism that you can see those blossoming and taking your body to whatever levels you want?
Definitely. It's like the best way to start.
Right.
Get a solid core and then move on from there.
Oh, nice, man. I like that. Core foundation. Now, Mark. Oh, Mark's kicking back. Hey, Mark, what do you think, man? I know Mark is highly knowledgeable. For anybody that doesn't know Mark is
No pressure.
Great friends and colleagues. He's actually highly educated. So I love to hear your 2 cents, Mark, on like, what are some of your favorite, if you had to boil it down, like athletic movement patterns or exercises that you're like, man, these are just catastrophically important?
I mean, just to kind of like parrot what you had mentioned, you have your standard 4, which is, as you've discussed, squatting, pushing, overhead pressing, and pulling.
Yeah.
In terms of like how human beings do things. That can be expanded to also include hinging, planking, and lunging. So depending on how you're kind of thinking about it, you could either just keep it like 4-4 or an expanded 7.
Yeah.
But so when it comes to like athletic performance, the efforts of performance and skill are at such a high competitive level that if there are even relatively small mistakes in movements, that can dump performance relative to your competitor, and it can also open somebody up for injury. And so for athletic development, I feel strongly, just as you mentioned, to initially master a movement before that movement is loaded.
Right.
And so what's fun about that, by separating skill and performance in like a program, let's see if you can do this with body control first, and then let's see if we can speed it up.
Right.
So yeah, I'm a firm believer in pretty much, the 4, maybe including the other ones too, and making sure then it pertains to the athletic demand.
Do you train yourself like that, Mark? Do you follow that discipline for like your clients? Do you follow that discipline when you're training yourself? Or are you more just, you know what, I'm just gonna kind of hyper focus on one thing, or your model is completely different? Is there another modality?
Yeah, I mean, dude, no joke. I think it's great. It's a great question. The way that I'm kind of processing that question is, do I, as an academic, just know the theory behind movement patterns, or is it something that I do as well?
Right.
And I really try and make sure that my programs are well-rounded. Now, here's the thing, just as a disclaimer, I don't play in any particular sport. I don't have very specific goals when it comes to body composition. I mean, I'd rather go down than up in fat.
Yeah.
So most of my exercise personally is to stay generally well-rounded and pain-free.
Right.
So my personal programming tends to accomplish those things. However, I have trained not like crazy athletes, but I've trained people that do football, basketball, soccer, as well as individuals that are in some stage of programming for, like a show.
Yeah.
And regardless of where that person is starting from and where they're trying to go, the fitness of someone is very much like the hull of a boat. The 1% of the hull that is missing is where all of that stress is going to go. So however a program, whether it's general performance or for performance enhancement, it just needs to have a certain amount of well-roundedness to it, and that is accomplishing all of these patterns in all directions, all planes of motion in a week. Once those things are set, then you can start moving into optional or specific things. So that's my general philosophy on that.
Hey, and Corey and Barron coming from like the trainee side, because Corey, if you didn't know, he's one of my great longtime clients. He's freaking amazing.
I remember seeing you in the gym at 24, Corey. I have seen you many times,
Absolutely.
my friend. Always covered in sweat. So either you're very hot coming in, or you really earned your workout when you leave.
Actually, he just does that. He splashes water on himself when he gets
Yeah, when Steve would ask me to go over and get a drink of water, which he did often, I'd always do a little splash down, so it just looked like I was working a little bit harder. So
you definitely have
the thing with Steve is we always used to like to visit about things, and so on days when I would come in and I was a little tired, I thought I can probably talk my way through this workout. But Steve would just extend the workout. So it didn't matter. I wasn't gaining anything. I was just prolonging the inevitable.
Yeah.
Love it.
Hey,
That's what a taskmaster he is. So, yeah.
Hey, yeah. And Baron and Corey, if you guys have any questions about like movements, or if you have any questions about kind of like, you know, your own routines you're working on, besides obviously I'm working with Baron, I have worked with Corey. Glenn, you're the man once again coming in. Thank you for joining the party. I love it. Glenn is one of my longtime colleagues. He's actually been with me for a long, long time, and he's highly knowledgeable in many facets of fitness too. So I know he's gonna have some 2 cents in this whole conversation.
Steve, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go for it.
So when I started as a Wii trainer, my goal was to try and learn exercises, whatever that means. But like, how many exercises can I learn? How many ways can I exercise doing it? And then when I became like a trainer, it became this word called patterns, like movement patterns.
Right.
In your own words and opinions, can you describe the similarities and differences between exercises and movement patterns?
Yeah. So I want everybody to listen to this, because obviously it's I'm glad you brought that up. I want you to think of exercises as more like a visual, okay, if you will. When I look at, let's say, a video, because everybody looks at videos now and everybody can see videos of an exercise. Let's just imagine it was on mute, okay? When I think of an exercise, I'm looking at something that's on mute from afar. You know, you've probably seen people in the gym too that are glancing off at someone else, kind of like, oh my God, copying or imitating some big guy that's doing bicep curls or something like that. And they're like, well, I can do that. Okay, I got it. But when I think of movement patterns, I think of, okay, let me press the sound button on that, because I want to hear the person or the trainer or the athlete or whoever who's doing it properly. Let's just say overall they're doing the movement properly. I want to know what their thinking patterns are. Like, I want to know what intellectual knowledge is going through their head about what they're doing during their squat, what they're doing during the bicep curl. And remember, movement patterns can be very small or they can be very large, fast, tempo, range of motion may be different. I think attention to detail is more movement patterns. I think exercises is more like, okay, I'm just looking at something and there's a variety of it and I'm just going to mimic it. Okay. That's how I kind of explain it to my clients. I know Corey and Baron and who've been with me now. I mean, it's nothing. Like I said, the movements I described earlier, and you said it too, Mark, you kind of were like, yeah, I concur. Those are like some of the movements I do too and everything. Like, these aren't movements that are they just popped up in my head and I just magically made them up. We've seen these things many, many times before. And I think the difference, Baron said it earlier, he's like, well, the difference was I wasn't thinking when I was doing it. I wasn't hyper focusing, or something wasn't explained to me in detail. I was just moving through that exercise that I knew I used to do back in PE, which was how many push-ups can you do for, like, to pass the physical test or whatever to get a gold star. So I didn't know what was going on. They just told me to do a push-up. And then all of a sudden I broke it down to Corey or Baron, and now they're like, whoa, I got so much thinking going on in this one rep of movement pattern that this exercise isn't just an exercise to me anymore. I got to focus on what my whole body is doing. I hope I know that was kind of dragged on, but those are my 2 examples when I look at exercises. I think of mute videos. When I think of movement patterns, I think of heavy detail and explanation. So I don't know if you agree with that, Mark, or you disagree, or you have another platform you want to say, or Baron or Corey or Glenn, if you guys have a different, output on that from your perspective, speak up, guys.
Yeah.
It's definitely.
I have a little take on that, and that is that, and I learned when I was taking golf instruction years and years ago from a really good teacher. And, we tend to try to emulate good athletes out there, and in particular, in this case, good golfers. And what this instructor told me, and Steve, you and I have talked about this before, is that feel and real are not the same. And so what you think you're doing correctly because you either looked at it in a video or you looked at some diagrams in an instruction book, and then you attempt to do that on your own. For me personally, the big difference is, Steve, when working with you, is the finger touch. It's the small little nuanced moves that make the difference. Right. It's, as you alluded to, it's not the push-up. You know, the push-ups we did in high school are not the same push-ups we did with you in the gym.
Right.
And it's not the same so-called sit-ups or the same squats or the same chin-ups or pull-ups. It's not the same as what you do with a trainer. It's completely different.
Right. And Baron, if you got 2 cents on this subject too, coming from that, because like I said, I know, Baron, with you are an athlete and you're very intellectual in what your body's capable. And with you, Corey brought up a good little point. It's those small nuances that I pointed out, where it wasn't like, oh my God, I got to change up everything. It was like these little attention to detail that changed the game for you. You know what I mean, Baron? Does that make sense?
So going off of the exercise versus the movement pattern, the exercise is the push-up.
Yeah.
The movement pattern is the motion that you take from start to finish. So starting, are you in the right position? Is everything aligned? Are you using the right muscles as you're going down? There's the movement pattern. Are you still going the right way? Is everything in the right form down to the bottom when you're at the bottom of the push-up?
Yeah.
Midway through the pattern and then coming back up, making sure that you're using the right posture and activating the right muscles. So that's
just right there shows you how far you have come just in your mindset on what you think of a freaking push-up. My God, dude, that's exactly the mindset I have when I'm doing one movement or one rep of a push-up. That's how much things of information are going through my brain. Now, Glenn, you just jumped in, man.
Hey guys, I'm sorry I have to jam, but it was just nice popping on. Wish I could stay a little bit longer, but Godspeed, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Mark. Healthy debate, man. Thank you. Glenn, I know Glenn jumped in here, or jumped into my life with a thing that challenged me, and I bring it up all the time because till this day, I still haven't mastered it, and I haven't touched it since. But Glenn brought trapeze work into my life, where he set it up one day, and I was like, Glenn, what the hell are you doing, man? This looks like a Circus Olay act going on in the gym. And I'll tell you, if you are not concentrating on what you're doing, those things can get away from you really quickly, or your movement can get away from you really quickly. Explain a little bit about your kind of like take on doing something like that, Glenn. Like, what's going on in your head when you're doing trapeze or something along that athletic side?
So what you're really looking for there are 2 things. Number 1, artistry. And number 2, don't get hurt, right? So even before you touch the apparatus, except in the case of someone like yourself, who I already knew was up for it, we're talking about 10 weeks of conditioning, 10 weeks of strength before you even touch the apparatus. Okay, you can touch it, you can look at it, but you're not getting on that thing.
Yeah.
Until I know that you're in the physical condition to do it. Just like if you're an 80-year-old client having trouble getting up off the floor, you're not going to be getting up off the floor and trying it until I know you've got a good squat and a good lunge and you understand the movement pattern that enables you to do that safely.
Yeah.
Right. When it comes to, So on a trapeze, you want to look good, right? When you swing a baseball, you want to do it in an effective way. When you bowl, you want the best, ability to get a strike. All of that's going to be based on your pattern, not just what you want to accomplish, but how you do it.
And I think that ego thing also came up along that line when I did see you do it, and I was like, damn it, Glenn, I'm not gonna let you beat me up on this, man. I'm gonna accomplish this thing if it kills me. And I was just like, Oh, and it killed me. Oh, it definitely wiped me out in like 15 minutes. And trust me,
You so rocked at that, man. That's unbelievable.
I have a lot. I have a lot of work to do. Don't let them. Don't think that I just accomplish it right away.
It was awesome.
But I love the fact that you brought that up. Another bang for your buck thing is the reason why I go through all those details with you guys. And Glenn also, who's a trainer too, goes through all the detail on athleticism and you know, you have to crawl before you run kind of thing. Is we also want to learn how to keep you guys and myself, let me rephrase that, everybody safe. Like, I want to be in this to the long haul. I want to be in this till like I'm, you know, dead and gone, where I was still every day able to accomplish some sort of athleticism as a human being. Not just, I use athleticism because that's how I train, but some form of athleticism in my life, because we do these components all the time. And I want to jump into that. Actually, I want to transition into some points of athleticism. I want you guys to really focus on this too, because I love to hear your debates on this. If you feel like you concur with this, or you're like, you know what, can you give me an example of that? Or how do you feel about that? I wrote it down right here, and this is, and I'm going to actually put it on the newsletter too, of the components of athleticism, so you guys can actually look at it and be like, yeah, I definitely do that throughout my life. And then I'm also going to dial in the development of each through a picture that I'm going to include too in the newsletter through email. So one of the things that I look at when I think of athleticism, and everything comes in stages, is strength. Okay. The ability to create force, speed, the ability to minimize time cycle of a given movement, power. Okay. The ability to create maximum force in the shortest minimal amount of time. Mental resilience, like what you were saying, you're like, man, I remember times where your arms, and Corey, you too, and even for myself, my arms are shaking and my thighs are burning and my lungs are on fire. But the one thing I never gave up on is, how do I start my movement? How do I transition in my movement? What does it look like at the bottom, the top, the middle, and keeping that form? So mental resilience, or, you know, during fatigue, is super important. Aerobic capacity, okay, anaerobic capacity, balance and coordination, agility, okay, and true agility isn't doing a bunch of ladder drills. I know you guys seen people in the gym do a bunch of ladder drills. That is not true agility. True agility is a cognitive reference, where everything is based off a reactive point of view. So if I were to throw something at you, Baron, right when you turned around, or Corey, or someone threw something at me, it would be as fast as I can grab it, or as fast as I can turn. If you called out a color or a number or a direction, I'm gone. I think a lot of us that we don't use reactive part of our brain, we lose it very quickly, especially upon age and other physiological, you know, disabilities. The next thing is stability, the ability to prevent movement in one part of your body, which everybody knows is super important, while creating movement in another, thus protecting a lot of vulnerability in other areas throughout the body. And last but not least, the most important thing about being a human being that we lose sight of, since we're always in front of the computer, or doing something very nonchalant, maybe slouching, watching TV. I know I fall in that category, is mobility. Flexibility in the motion, the range of motion through muscles and joints. Those are my 10 categories and components of a human body, and how you should train yourself. And now I know that's really complex, but it gives you got nothing but time, right? Like, if you know how to put together a program efficiently, these categories are the 10 components you need to tackle. Now, does anybody work on this right now? Heavy, is there something right off the top of your head, you're like, what is that category, or describe a little bit more about that? Anybody?
Yeah, so for me, what that leads into is actually phasing.
Yep.
Right. So I'm not going to be working, you know, if I'm working on strength, it's going to take me at least an hour.
Yeah.
Probably a couple of hours. And I'm going to have, I'm going to have an inability to work on other things during that day. So I'll work on something else the following day. I'll build in rest. I'm working toward a particular goal so that I improve myself, progressive overload, and cross training.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'll be working on strength one day, mostly power another day, mostly flexibility another day, mostly endurance another day, mostly, but some other things sprinkled in.
So you each day of the week is going to be, rather than the whole week is focused on one particular thing, you have certain days for certain components of your training, pretty much.
Yeah, I guess today was actually strength. 2 days before that was endurance. The day in the middle was rest. Today I'm going to go back to a little bit of endurance.
Nice.
Yeah, and so then the question is, like, during this time, a lot of things are on hold. But like if I'm working toward Spartan Beast or something, or if I'm working toward 4th of July, you know, race, which I hope to be in, hopefully we're able to do that.
Yeah.
Then I'm working toward improving speed, for example, you know, to get across that finish line with the best possible finish. And the same thing goes for clients, right? We would look at the client and say, okay, how can we get you safely and efficiently and effectively where you want to go?
Yeah. And Baron, what about you? I know that we train in, you know, multiple components that I mentioned, but is there anything that you feel that I nailed off that you're not training right now and you're like kind of interested about it, or anything on like, hey, how do I incorporate that into my training if we're not working on it? Anything along those lines?
Flexibility. We've gone over a couple stretches, but I feel like there's still plenty of room for improvement.
Yeah. And do you feel, I know it's going to be a silly question, but do you feel like flexibility for you is highly ignored, rather than if I were just to say, hey, go get on your bike and go kill it up a hill, and you'd be like, sure, no problem, compared to, hey, I need you to do 15-minute flexibility kind of session? Would you be more into the other thing, or would you be like, you know what, I need to do that?
For me personally, I would prefer to just get on a bike and go for a bike ride.
Okay. Do you feel like flexibility and mobility, for that matter, two different subjects, do you find them to be super important to your health and just overall program?
I think so. Yeah. It comes down to, like, if I don't stretch before working out, most of the time afterwards, I'm going to feel some sort of pain.
Yeah.
Just because of that, I can tell how important it is.
Right. Exactly. Right off the bat. Right. In your prep work, not just after the fact or anything along that nature, or you dedicate one whole day to recovery. Recovery can come at the beginning of a workout, towards the end, a whole day worth. And Corey, what about you? Is there anything that I nailed off that you're kind of like, you know what, I really need to focus on that, or what's that about, or I'm interested in one of those topics?
I'll tell you, I mean, because of the time that we've spent working together, and so much of what we did, or at least a high percentage of what we did, had to do with body weight type movements and body weight type exercises, a lot of focus. You really raised my consciousness toward balance and the importance of balance and how difficult that can be with certain moves. You know, the dreaded blue pad.
Woo! And, oh God, the devil blue pad, that thing will get you.
And you also know me, Steve, that you know, I'm a fairly busy guy, whether I'm here at work or whether I'm home. I'm always
Baron's the same way. I know that firsthand. He works very hard. And now you guys
I try to incorporate a lot of the things that we did together in the gym with what I do if I'm home on a Saturday and Sunday because I can't go anywhere and doing projects. I try to incorporate so many of those principles while also accomplishing something. So I may not set an hour aside and go, hey, I'm going to do these exercises, but I'm going to be up and down a ladder.
Yeah.
Let's say I'm going to be a few weeks ago, I was putting in a bunch of lighting. That required me to be on my hands and knees and required a lot of squatting. Right. And I thought, this is just like what you do in the gym. you just call it something different, but it's the same moves.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a kill two birds with one stone, so to speak, and it's not a waste. But I try to emulate those movements as best I can, whereas maybe in the past I wouldn't have given it any conscious thought.
Yeah.
But if I can get a squat in while I'm down putting on wire nuts, I'm getting some squats in. I mean, I'm doing that. So it's a little more kind of primitive movements, let's say.
Oh yeah.
But I think it falls under the umbrella of a workout and exercise.
Yeah, and I want to make this clear. Like, things are different for everybody when we're in a controlled environment. Okay, like when I name something or we start getting into heavy detail about something, it's like going to class. I know that's sometimes we don't want to associate that because it's just like, oh God, I got to go to class. But it is like that. It's very much, even when I was training with my trainer, or I was learning from, people I admire and things of that nature that were in front of me. I'm very focused on that controlled environment, on what my patterns are like, what I'm moving, because if I can develop it and really focus on it in the controlled environment and then transition it into what you just said, Corey, and, like Baron's moving into his new house, he's got new projects that he's working on. If you can incorporate what you do from the controlled environment into your everyday life, because let's be real, guys, even if you work out 1 hour a day, there's 168 hours in 1 week. You can't compare that 7 hours of controlled environment towards, okay, now I have 161 hours left to play with in 1 week. Like, there's a lot of habits you can start to recreate if you don't transition it into your everyday life. And I think that was super important that you brought that up, Corey, because one way or another, this athletic patterns that I'm talking about are not really just athleticism or athletic training. Actually, they transition into your everyday life, and you balance one way or another. I mean, you may have your 2 feet on the ground, but let's say you put one pant leg up at a time and you're standing on one leg, you're doing another. In that split moment, you are balancing. You are having that effect. All right. Or you want to look underneath the bed, you go on the ground, you push yourself back up, or you're doing gardening work. I'm going to squat down rather than lean over like an old lady. Like, things like that, it keeps you aware and it keeps you safe. And so you're constantly creating these habits. I just think from what I've been taught and the details that I had to retrain my whole self and kind of create a new foundation and build a new house off these habits and these modalities. It's really changed the game for me. Not just when I train people, but when I train myself, or, the information I'm really looking for. So we're coming down to the last few minutes, guys. So if you have any questions about like any of the topics today, or anything you guys want to bring up around these topics, or random, we can bring it up right now.
So along those lines, it kind of what it makes me think of, in terms of movement, why we do that is the physiology of a human being. You've got your musculoskeletal structure, yeah. You've got your metabolism, yeah. Right? You've got your blood flow, right, and your cardiovascular health, and all of these things are going to respond to how we move in the environment that we were born into. Right. So it isn't just, hey, I'm doing a squat or a lunge because it looks good. Yeah. If I'm squatting and it's causing me to work, that my whole body is going to be responding in a positive way that's going to benefit me over the long term.
I agree. And like I said, that's a positive note to end on, because we only got 1 minute left. I just want to say thank you for you guys to come in today and listen, speak up, take the information in, speak about your own life and how, I was great enough to be in it, to teach some of you guys and work with some of you guys. Spread the word about what's going on here. I love to hear people who are just like trying to get into fitness, trying to learn more about it, want to fulfill their own curiosity about topics, or maybe jump in about, habits they want to change or create. Just spread the word. And if you guys want to show them what we're made of, I will put in the newsletter to the link of everything that has to do with our YouTube channel, so you can see past episodes and live interactions that we've had. All right, guys, that's it. Thank you for coming today. Have a great Friday. Baron, I might see you tomorrow. All right, guys. I'll see you later. Thanks again. See you next week.
Bye.